Chapter 19. Grandmother say you come to village today, a teen announced 2 days later. That's kind of her, Matt answered, but my hand is just about healed. It doesn't need any more medicine. Not for medicine, Matt waited uncertainly. My grandma very surprised. White boy so long way for Indian dog, a teen explained. She say you welcome. So once again, Matt crossed the river into the Indian stockade. This time, though, the dogs barked at him and children stared and giggled. He did not feel so much like a stranger. Sackness held out a hand of welcome. A teen's grandmother did not exactly smile, but her thin lips were less grim. Behind her, a teen sister smiled but did not speak. The old woman dipped a clamshell ladle into a kettle and filled 3 bowls with stew of fish and corn and drew back while a teen and Sackness and Matt ate their meal in silence. Neither she or Marie ate till the men were finished. After the meal, a teen did not hurry him away. He rather grandly played a host and led Matt about the village. He was amused when Matt kept stopping every few feet to watch what the women were doing. Matt was filled with curiosity. He knew well enough that a teen was scornful of the squaw work the white boy had to do, but a teen didn't have to worry about what he was going to eat the next day. There were so many things Matt wanted to learn. He observed carefully as 2 women pounded dried kernels of corn between 2 rounded stones, catching the coarse flour on a strip of birch bark. He marked how they spread berries on bark so that the sun dried them hard as pebbles. He admired the baskets made of a single strip birch bark, bent and fastened to the corners so tightly that water couldn't be boiled inside. I must remember that, he resolved. I could do that myself if I tried. For a time, a teen good-naturedly answered those questions. Finally, he grew impatient of squaw work. He led Matt toward a cluster of boys who squatted in a circle in the dirt path. Absorbed in some noisy game, the boys widened their ring to make room for 2 more, and Matt crouched awkwardly on his heels to watch them. One after the other, they were shaking 6 smooth bone discs in a wooden bowl and tossing them into the ground. Each disc was marked on the one side with a band of red paint. When each boy had had a turn, the one who had thrown the most discs to land painted side up was proclaimed the winner, and with much gloating he collected from each of the others a number of small sticks. Then they handed the bowl to Matt. His luck was good. 5 of the discs showed red bands, with laughter and clowning, the others piled up before him with a little heap of sticks. What was so exciting about the simple game, he wondered, to cause so much shouting? The bowl went rapidly round the circle. The sticks kept changing hands, and presently he had the answer. One of the boys had no sticks left to play. With mocking groan, he unclasped from his arm a wider copper band and tossed it into the winner. So that's it, Matt thought silently. Sooner or later I'm bound to lose too, and when I do, what will they expect me to forfeit? He did not have long to wait. At his next turn, every one of the discs landed blank side up. Ruefully, he handed over the last of the sticks he had won. There was a gleeful shout, and then they waited. What do I have? He thought desperately. Nothing in his pocket but a jackknife, and his very life depended upon that knife. Then the boy nearest him reached over and jerked roughly at the sleeve of his shirt. He pretended not to understand, and the boy tugged harder. 2 of the others got to their feet, plainly ready to tear the shirt from his back. A teen made no move to help him. Grimly, he pulled his shirt over his head and tossed it to the winner. It served him right, he supposed. His father had always forbid him to gamble. But what was he going to do without that shirt? It was only one he had. Now a team put an end to the game. He leaped to his feet and produced from nowhere a softball made of deerskin. Instantly the others raced off in all directions and came back carrying those thin sticks. One of these was thrust at Matt. It was a curious sort of bat, light and flexible with a wide, flat curve on the tip. Forgetting his humiliation, Matt suddenly grinned. With a bat in his hand, he could hold his own with any Indian. The boys back in Quincy could have told them that. Eagerly, he joined the scramble of choosing sides. But never had he played a game like this, so fast, so merciless. The ball could not be touched by hand or foot. It just kept flying through the air with the sticks alone. If it fell to the ground, some player scooped it up with the tip of his bat and sent it spinning again. The Indian boys were bewilderingly quick and skillful. They wielded their bats with no heed for each other's heads, and certainly not for Matt's. It was no accident, he knew, when an elbow jabbed suddenly into his right eye. These boys were putting him to the test. Ignoring the blows that fell on his head and shoulders, Matt swung grimly at the whirling ball, missing it over and over, but sometimes feeling the satisfying thwack of the bat against the leather. He was thankful now that he had no shirt. If only he could be wearing a breechcloth instead of tight English breeches. But there was no time for worrying about his clothes. Finally, by pure luck, he sent the ball into the hole in the ground that marked on the goal. Out of the breath and dripping, he grinned as his side generously charged him and whacked his sore shoulders. Then, with a whoop, they raced all together through the stockade gate down to the river and went leaping like frogs into the water. Matt floated face down, grateful for the coolness against his burning cheeks. All at once, a brown arm circled his neck and dragged him under. Squirming free, he seized a black head in both hands, and the two boys went down together. They came up gasping and grinning. Suddenly, Matt was enjoying himself. It was almost as good as being back in Quincy again. The sun had reached the tops of the pines when he went to Etienne's cabin to bid the grandmother goodbye. He stood studying him, and he flushed under his sharp eyes. He must look a sight, he knew. There was a lump as big as an egg on his forehead, and he was right. I was probably turning black. She turned and spoke a few stern words to Etienne. With a shrug, he went out and returned a few minutes later carrying Matt's shirt. They play trick on you, he grinned. Joke. Some joke, Matt retorted. He wanted to refuse the shirt, but he couldn't afford to be proud about his only shirt. Resentfully, he pulled it over his head. Before they left, the old woman gave each of them a slab of cake heavy with nuts and berries. Her eyes, as she looked at her grandson, were warm and bright. Matt was minded now how his mother had often looked at him, pretending to be angry with him, but not able to hide that she was mighty fond of him just the same. Suddenly, he felt a sharp stab of homesickness. Outside the cabin, Etienne's dog was waiting. He was limped after them to the river, and when Matt stepped into the canoe, the dog jumped in after him and settled down only a few inches from Matt's knees. He had never willingly come so close before. Etienne noticed and commented, "Dog, remember." Was that possible, Matt wondered? Could a dog caught in a trap, even though he snapped out in pain and fear, sense that someone was trying to help him? Could a dog remember the terrible ordeal at all? You couldn't read a dog's mind, but just possibly a dog could read a white boy's mind. Very slowly, Matt reached down and laid his hand on the dog's back. The dog did not stir or growl. Gently, Matt scratched behind the ragged ear. Gradually, against the bottom of the canoe, the thin tail began to thump in his contented rhythm. At the opposite bank, Etienne watched Matt climb out of the canoe, but he did not follow. Apparently, this was just as far as he intended to go. As Matt hesitated, he lifted his hand. It occurred to Matt that this might be a compliment. Without saying a word, Etienne was acknowledging that Matt could find his own way home through the forest. Returning his way, Matt set out with confidence he did not quite feel. It was growing dark. He would have to walk fast, or he would not be able to mark the signs along the trail. He was very tired. The bump on his forehead was throbbing. He was sore from head to toe, and his eye was almost swollen shut. But to his surprise, deep inside, he felt content. Was it because Etienne's dog had finally trusted him? No, more than that had changed. He had passed some sort of test, not by the means of with flying colors. He had plenty of bruises to remind him of that, but at least he had not disgraced Etienne. He felt satisfied, and for the first time since his father had left home, he did not feel alone in the forest.